Shadow the Hedgehog has always been a character who is hugely important to me. I mean, his design would have been enough to lock me in on its own. Look at that handsome boy. But the best thing about Shadow was that he also had a fantastic character lying underneath as well. A tragic past, misunderstood motivations, stoic with a heart of gold underneath, immense vulnerability on a journey to find himself. Shadow was the perfect addition to the Sonic series as it grew up alongside its audience. And as someone who has been with this series since day one, it broke my heart to see him go on to be misused.
And you know what makes you weak? Your loyalty to your pathetic friends.
Or not used at all after Sonic Team lost its way in the mid-2000s.
You've got this, Sonic.
But, despite all that, I've always insisted that Shadow was of tremendous importance to the series, and always looked to the future with hope that he might one day return to his former glory. I mean, it only took 18 years, but with the release of Sonic X Shadow Generations, it seems like the wish of every Shadow fan has finally been granted, and they've fixed the most important thing of all. Sonic no longer holds Amy by her face. Of course, I mean Shadow's character. So buckle up, Ace Colonists, because we're going on a character restoration trip back to the Ark. Back to where it all began. The story opens on the Ark 50 years in the past and shows the day Shadow awakens for the very first time. As Gerald and Maria enter the room, it's insanely cute how giddy with excitement Maria is. You can really tell how lonely it must be for her being one of only 2 children on the entire space station, as she just can't wait to meet Shadow and make a new friend. Shadow's eyes open as Gerald welcomes him to the world, and the scene cuts to the present day. After making his way to the Ark on a stolen gun rocket to investigate the nightmarish premonitions he was having, Shadow finds himself in the room where he was born. The same room he first met Maria in 50 years earlier. But before his mind can dredge up any more memories, his thoughts are interrupted by Rouge. Checking in with him remotely from Earth, she's once again pestering him about attending Sonic's birthday party. As beautifully ominous as the Ark looks floating in space, the view of the Earth below is even more stunning. A view that Shadow has probably soaked in hundreds of times before with Maria. But without her to share it with, even the beauty of Earth from space isn't enough to stem his exasperation with Rouge's nagging. Shadow reminds her that Gun detected an unusual biosignature on the station, and he isn't leaving until all possible threats are dealt with. She tries to entice him with free food, but all that gets her is Shadow's famous dismissive grunt. Humph is always on my Shadow bingo card, and it never lets me down. It's interesting that Shadow said it was Gun who detected the biosignature on the Ark, because that implies that even after Shadow stole the rocket at the gun base, and the commander was all butthurt that he didn't ask for help, that he still gave it anyway. Guess we know who wears the pants in that relationship, huh? Just then, Shadow sees a visual anomaly and proceeds to chase it through the Ark. An anomaly which, confirming his worst fears, turns out to be Black Doom. After being led on a merry chase and none the wiser as to how Doom returned or what his plan is, Shadow ends up in a room on the Ark containing the fake Emerald Tails created in Sonic Adventure 2. For me, this seems a bit weird, because didn't the fake Emerald get destroyed when Sonic took it to the Eclipse Cannon? Didn't he?
Slam dunk it in there!
Both the Dark and Hero stories begin Sonic and Shadow's race with a countdown to the cannon firing, so the only explanation of that series of events that makes sense in my mind is that Sonic managed reaching the cannon first, destroying it with the fake Emerald. Then Eggman put the real Emerald he stole from Tails into the Ark console, activating Gerald's Doomsday scenario. So either the fake somehow survived the explosion and made its way back inside the Ark, or this is explained away as some sort of time anomaly or Black Doom interference. I only have one thing to say about that, and I think my boy puts it best. But before we have time to think any further on that, the Time Eater appears, and alongside Sonic and friends, Shadow is pulled into white space, a dimension between space and time. The first person Shadow bumps into here is E123 Omega. And just like in Dark Beginnings, I love this guy. The conversations Shadow has with the people he encounters in Whitespace are actually really interesting. I'll go into the others in more detail when they're relevant, but his chats with Omega are predictably hilarious, ranging from him worrying about Rouge to saying he enjoys working with Shadow as he doesn't discourage his rampages, pondering about proving he is stronger than Metal Overlord by destroying him, or Sonic, or both, before demanding Shadow turn his hand into a gun because the Black Arms weapons are organic and he shares their DNA. Never change, Omega. After restoring the timeline at the Ark, Shadow is contemplating his new powers back in Whitespace. He's never been able to do these things before, yet it somehow feels natural. As he walks along, he spots two figures in the distance, and through the blinding whiteness, he could swear one of them is Maria. He's lost for words, but when Maria goes to run to him, Gerald can be heard telling her to wait. It looks as painful for her to stay away as it does for Shadow to believe what he's seeing. He shakes it off, telling himself that she's gone, he must be seeing things. He needs to stay focused on the task at hand, not chasing, as he puts it, dreams. It was a nice touch that they had Shadow's original theme, Throw It All Away, playing over this moment. Playing it over Shadow's flashback to Maria's death was perfect, and I'm liking, as far as the games go at least, since the jury is still out on how they'll handle this in the third movie, that they aren't shying away from the fact that Maria was gunned down in cold blood. I get the impression that the movie is probably gonna change that scenario up, so it's great to see it still intact here. Shadow continues to put the timeline right, revisiting places from his past while acquiring new Doom powers before coming face to face with the Bio-Lizard, a failed precursor to his own existence. Gotta love that remix of Supporting Me. Shadow says that he will end the suffering of this tortured soul, which kinda brings me back to that question Azuka got in his Q&A for this game. Maybe the person who asked seen this line of dialogue and wondered if Shadow perhaps felt sympathy for the creature. Hey, maybe the question just got lost in translation. Or Azuka forgot the line, I don't know. But considering later in the fight Shadow tells the creature to stop struggling and that it clings to a crueler fate, I have to believe he probably did feel sorry for it, ultimately showing it compassion by ending its suffering. As Shadow continues to put the timeline right and reveal more of Whitespace, the shell covering the Black Moon begins to crack, and Black Doom decides that now is the time to approach Shadow. He congratulates him on his progress, and if I didn't know any better, seems to be actively guiding Shadow to these new powers. Continuing to disregard Gerald's contribution entirely, Doom keeps referring to Shadow as his finest creation, a title that Shadow is not at all happy with, slapping back with,
I destroyed you once. I will do it again.
Doom says that Shadow may have defeated them, but the Black Arms live on. And thanks to this temporal anomaly, his plans to revive his forces and consume the world have been accelerated. Shadow calls him out to finish this here and now, but Doom, probably not too keen on a one-on-one fight after what happened last time, says that Shadow isn't ready yet, that neither of them are ready yet. But once Shadow has been perfected, then it will be time for his reckoning, putting it in no uncertain terms that he wants Shadow to gain these powers. With no choice but to press on anyway, as he makes his way through Whitespace, Shadow hears a girl scream, and turns to see a group of Black Arms aliens chasing a young girl in a blue dress. I know some people were complaining about censorship around Rouge's clothes in this game, but who needs scantily clad bats boobing up the place when you have these thick boys running around? As the audience, we can now see it's Maria, but even without knowing that, Shadow jumps in to save her. After taking out the Black Arms soldiers, he finally realizes it's Maria. This poor boy. He can't even react to or reciprocate her hug. He just stands there and T-poses. He's in shock, but he begins to snap out of it when Gerald runs up to thank him for saving his granddaughter. Maria asks Shadow where he learned to fight like that, but Shadow is too lost in thought. Trying to figure out what's going on, he guesses this Gerald and Maria are from a point in time before the Ark disaster, and has already, perhaps cruelly, teased himself with the idea that their fates can be changed. Maria asks Shadow what's the matter, telling him he looks grim, and for me, his response is a straight up gut punch.
I'll be fine. We'll all be fine. Find somewhere safe to hide. I'll take care of everything.
Kirk is on fire in this game, and it just goes to show with some voice direction and actual knowledge of the character and his motivations that he's always been more than capable of doing an awesome Shadow. As for Shadow's line of thinking, from the very first time Maria in Whitespace was shown in the trailers, I figured Shadow might go down this route of trying to save her. And I can't help but think this will probably only hurt him in the end. See? This guy knows what's up. Shadow goes on to have a pretty cool fight with Metal Overlord, or as IGN calls it,
like a metallic dragon that has you chasing him on the water.
After which, back in Whitespace, Maria sees him staring at his hands brimming with doom power. She asks if he's in any pain, but he says no. I don't care what he says. Nothing about him attaining these doom powers seems pleasant.
No!
Him and Sonic just be gluttons for that corruptive energy. Shadow says that he feels a connection to the symbol in the sky, that it feels the same as when he attains these new abilities. But Gerald says that's the power of Black Doom. He laments about how he made a Faustian deal with Doom in order to complete Shadow. And now that he's returned to collect on that deal, he fears everyone else will now have to pay for his sins. He kinda makes it out like it was a day he hoped would never come, when in reality we know he was preparing for this very eventuality, creating the Ark's canon to counteract Black Arm's invasion of Earth. Little did he know his greatest weapon had already been handed to him by the enemy. Perhaps in a shallow attempt to explain his reasoning for dealing with a monster, Gerald recounts how treating Maria on Earth at the time had become impossible, forcing him to take her to the Ark where he could better manage her condition, adding that her parents didn't like the idea. It's amazing that alongside an awesome story with top-notch writing and excellent gameplay, we also get this cool window into the inner thoughts and dynamics of these characters who largely have remained a total mystery in the 2+ decades since they were introduced. Gerald faced resistance from Maria's parents about bringing her to the Ark. And Maria had a younger sister. Who did she grow up to be? Is she still alive now? Will Shadow ever find her? Will she be good or evil? Holy shit! And Gerald apparently had 2 sons, one who shared his love of archaeology and another who shared his passion for robotics. So not only do we now know that Eggman likely takes after his own father, but that he also had an uncle who up until now has never been mentioned. This just opens up so many possibilities for future stories, and that's before even mentioning Gerald's diary. Rest assured we'll be covering that little puppy soon. Gerald explains that he reached the dangerous limits of his own attempts at creating the ultimate life form and finding a cure for Maria. So when Doom approached him with the miracle of chaos control, out of desperation, he accepted. With his DNA, the ultimate life form was born, and Doom fully intended to return for his warrior in the future. Gerald surmises that these new powers are all part of his plan. Shadow and Black Doom are linked, and as Shadow grows stronger, so does he. Gerald predicts he will either try to take over Shadow's mind and turn him into his ultimate warrior, or take his body and be reborn in him. But perhaps, with some of his signature cockiness slipping through, Shadow says,
You made me the ultimate life form, Professor. Black Doom is a fool. I'll take this power and use it as my own.
As Shadow continues through Whitespace, he eventually crosses paths with Sonic. That battle for the Emerald had to take place sometime, I guess. And what better time for our writer, Mr. Flynn, to give us a quick Sonic Adventure 2 and Heroes reference.
The blue hedgehog, of all places.
Yeah, sorry, but that Chaos Emerald and I have a date with a monster.
Well then, it'll be a date to die for.
It was interesting that they didn't make this encounter playable from Shadow's perspective, but as the race went on, I immediately started to get a sense of why. Shadow doesn't really attempt any offense. Blocking Sonic's attacks, he mostly seems to be just feigning an effort for appearances. He gets tempted at one point to use his Doom powers, but chooses not to, telling Rouge afterward how essentially he didn't want to cheat to win. Shadow basically takes a dive to let Sonic get away with the Emerald. Or so it would appear. In reality, Sonic escaped with the fake. For now, Shadow needs the real one and doesn't want Sonic on his back while he tries to take out Black Doom. But he asks Rouge to swap the fake out with his real one once he's finished. Clever boy, Shadow. I guess you don't need to turn in all your homework to be a clever hog. His expression here kills me in the best way possible. I don't know what the deal is with Rouge's voice acting here though. I can only assume this was recorded before Dark Beginnings because she sounded absolutely fine in that. But this all just sounds off to me, like a nagging mother or something.
I finally find you, and what do I see? Sonic defeating you. What happened? A fine time for you to be honorable. Now he has the Chaos Emerald. Wow, look at you. As a professional jewel thief, I approve.
That's no good.
Anyway, Shadow then goes on to face off against Mephiles. He doesn't recognize the Scepter of Darkness, so the 06 memory wipe is confirmed as still in effect. Despite the fact that he wasn't the boss of the Kingdom Valley portion of the game, presentation-wise, Mephiles is handled very well. Still can't believe those purple pools tipped me off all the way back in the early trailers. It's really cool that he's hidden away in the sewers beneath the map, and the atmosphere is set perfectly with the music taking an ominous turn as you descend. This game gives Mephiles a really desperate vibe as he's frantic in his efforts to be restored to the timeline. Funny that, after how eager he was to fuse with Iblis and become Solaris and devour all of time and space, but I guess all this time in the naughty corner of non-existence changed his mind. As Shadow has him on the ropes, Mephiles is literally screaming that he wants to exist. But Shadow just punches him in the throat and delivers the perfectest cheesy victory line ever.
There is no future for you. Ever.
Who's this guy that looks like a crystalline version of me? Why does he seem to know me? How dare he want to exist? Oh, never change, Shadow. It was awesome to see Mephiles back. Even if it was a pity it had to be in such a jam-packed game with so many other appearances. He's definitely the type of villain who needs screen time to get the full effect, but it was still great to see him again, even without Dan Green voicing him. My thoughts go out to any Infinite fans who got their hopes up. I was also confident he'd make an appearance. Afterward, Shadow makes it back to Gerald and Maria, and I just can't get enough of watching Maria's giddy excitement whenever she sees him. But their moment is quickly interrupted as the master of projecting himself, Black Doom, appears. Shadow's instincts don't miss a beat, and he reverts straight back into his guardian role. Doom gives his speech again about how soon Shadow will be his, but Maria cuts him off.
Shadow will never serve you. He's nothing like you.
Fair play, Maria. That girl is brave as fuck. Look at Gerald having to hold her back. But Doom insists that since the Black Arm's blood flows in his veins, Shadow is a warrior, a destroyer, opening Shadow up for one of the best slapdowns he's ever done.
Yes, the warrior that will destroy you.
But Doom just shrugs it off, saying that he has learned from their last encounter. Shadow can struggle all he wants, but this time, Doom owns him. Struggling to hide his frustration, Shadow asks Gerald what he thinks Doom meant by learning from their last encounter. All while freaking black noises from Sonic Adventure 2 plays over the scene. That is amazing. Gerald surmises that Shadow must have beaten Doom at some point in the future. That is, from his perspective in time. But that he has since regained his body and is using white space to accelerate his plans for revenge. Furious at the prospect of Doom being unleashed on the world again, Shadow goes into a blind rage.
No more mistakes. This time, I will crush every last one of them.
But just like we've seen throughout Dark Beginnings, Maria is there to guide him out of it.
Shadow, no!
Maria?
It breaks my heart to see you so full of anger. This isn't who you are. Do you know why I named you Shadow? Because without light, there's only darkness. But a shadow will show you where to find the light. Do you understand? I don't want you to be driven by darkness. I want you to be happy.
Holy shit. I always had a feeling it might have been Maria and not Gerald who named Shadow, but hearing her explanation of it was just beautiful. What a perfect description of Shadow's character, and what anyone who takes the time to look beyond the surface knows him to be. a shining beacon of light that can withstand any darkness. This dialogue seems to be inspired by a comic that appeared on Sonic Channel for Sonic's 25th anniversary, and personally, I think it was a great choice for the origin of Shadow's name. As the anger melts away from his eyes, the time has finally come for Shadow to face Black Doom. With his new Doom Wings power, he can now reach the black moon in the sky and face his destiny. Despite Doom's taunting, Shadow no longer exudes an aura of darkness, but instead a shining light. Gerald apologizes to him for putting him on this path, but says that he is proud of how he walked it, ending the conversation by telling him that he believes in him and calling him his son.
Don't look at me! I'm not crying!
It was fantastic to see that father-son relationship between Shadow and Gerald get some screen time. It was always a dynamic I assumed existed and was probably one of my favorite parts of Project Shadow. If you haven't checked that out yet, or my analysis video on it, I'd do yourself a favor. But it was awesome to finally get to experience that in an official game. Reassuring Maria, who is clearly worried, Shadow tells her that everything will be alright. He is letting go of his destructive anger, but he will still fight.
Fight with your wish in my heart. Your wish for everyone to have a chance to be happy.
So let me get this straight. Alongside some of the best dialogue we've heard for Shadow in nearly 2 decades, we also get to see the rarest of all sights when it comes to our boy. An unironic smile. I don't throw the C word around lightly, but these two are just way too cute. From what they say to each other, to the way they look at each other, to the way Shadow could barely let go of her hand when he had to go fight. Even after being without her for so long, just the sight of her face is still enough to put him at ease. And with the teasing thought of maybe being able to save them, and one last nod of respect between father and son, Shadow sets out to face Black Doom.
The time has come, Shadow.
Agreed. Time to sever this bond between us forever.
You kinda have to hand it to Black Doom. Hedging his bets by achieving his Neo-Devil Doom form, all the while upgrading Shadow before choosing to either steal his body or enslave him is pretty genius. I mean, sure, he once again has underestimated Shadow's sheer willpower, but on paper at least, plan's a good un. Their battle is an epic one, but as we all might have expected, it turns out by empowering Shadow with Doom powers, Black Doom only succeeded in making a stick to beat his own ass with. In desperation, Doom tries to still Shadow using Chaos Control, but Shadow effectively nullifies it with a Chaos Control of his own. And even when grabbed by darkness itself, Shadow's light pierces through. And all hail Shadow blasts your eardrums as Shadow runs Doom through. Afterward, when Shadow returns to Maria's side, as always, she is overjoyed to see him, telling him she knew he could do it. But it quickly becomes apparent that any hope he had of changing her fate is gone. As his father and sister's hands begin to fade away in his own, he begins to realize what's happening. They are returning to their own time. But Shadow just can't accept that.
I'll stop Rouge. Use Chaos Control. Stop this moment in time.
Shadow?
It's heartbreaking yet completely understandable that Shadow is willing to give up everything just to spend an eternity frozen in time with his family. He knows Sonic needs the emerald, but right now that doesn't matter to him. Nothing else matters to him. He was so close to being reunited with the person he loved most. The person who understood him and brought out the best in him. He wasn't ready for that to be stolen from him the first time, and it seems he's still not ready to give it up now. But Maria tells him no. She doesn't want to live forever at one point in time, and she knows his friends need him. Shadow desperately protests, saying that she doesn't know what's going to happen. But Maria?
I know I'll see you again. And if fate draws us apart, I will always be in your heart.
Watching this moment, as Maria and Gerald fade away, leaving Shadow once again, was just as heartbreaking as I knew it would be going in. I think, from a fan's perspective, this can be seen as closure for Shadow, a chance for him to say goodbye and for them to leave it on no uncertain terms how they feel about each other. But there's also that other side of it. The side of it I can only see as twisting the dagger that's already in his heart. It will be interesting to see how or if this impacts Shadow going forward. And I'm wondering if we'll end up with an 06 style Shadow from here on out, or something completely different. We'll just have to wait and see. As Shadow leaves to bring the real Emerald to Sonic, a solitary tear lands on Rouge's cheek as he runs by. A tear he has shed before and will likely shed again. When it comes to Sonic X Shadow Generations, I think it's fair to say that beyond a shadow of a doubt, our boy is back. With the fearless year of Shadow being a huge success and the third Sonic movie right around the corner, this is where a whole new generation of Sonic fans will fall in love with Shadow. And after thoroughly enjoying this game from start to finish, I can say with confidence that if you couldn't experience the character first through Sonic Adventure 2, then this is an awesome alternative. Not only is it an excellent jumping on point for new fans, but it's also a beacon of hope for longtime Shadow fans who are hoping for everything they love about the character to make a return. Side conversations that reference games as obscure as 06, heart-to-heart conversations that build upon lore we thought long forgotten, and proof beyond a reasonable doubt that there is some sort of plan going forward for Team Dark. Or, at the very least, that their friendship will be respected. Nobody can pretend anymore that these three don't care about each other, and surely there can be no doubt that fans want to see them together. Despite the frankly amazing story and writing of Dark Beginnings, I still wasn't expecting the story of Shadow Generations to go as hard as it did. And that was only pushed even harder by the optional conversations Shadow has with Team Dark and Gerald and Maria. Of course, I would have loved all this to be voice acted and more prominent in the story than it is, but for what this game is meant to be, I understand why that couldn't happen. They already jammed a far more intense story into what is essentially a greatest hits game than I thought possible. But for now, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Did you enjoy the story of the Shadow side of Generations? What did you make of Shadow's character and Kirk Thornton's performance? Did you enjoy seeing his relationship with Maria expanded on? And, perhaps most importantly, how would you like to see Shadow's character progress in the games ahead? A Shadow who follows Gerald's advice and lives for his own happiness? Or a compromise that sees him protect the future but with one eye always on the past? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and make sure to turn on notifications to see more from me. I have plenty more videos on Shadow and this game in the works. If you'd like to support the channel and see your name credited at the end of my videos, you can become a patron on Patreon or a YouTube channel member. Any support is much appreciated, and a huge thank you to all the awesome people who already have. But for now, a big thank you for watching. And as always guys, take care.